you can kind of be more patient, right? You have the luxury of patience. And you mentioned this earlier. I'd like to circle back to that, where you were saying you thought about a concealed carry permit, but you feel like with the skills you have, you can afford to wait. You can afford to be patient. And a lot of the cases I work on are cases where people panic. They're not in self-control. They're genuinely scared, and we don't tend to make better decisions under stress. We tend to make worse decisions under stress. But people who have a higher degree of skill in defending themselves have less panic, less stress, and they have the luxury of patience because they're confident that, hey, I can afford to wait and still be able to effectively defend myself if things go sideways. And if you can afford to wait, a lot of the time, you never have to fight at all. The situation just dissipates. It goes away. That other person, either you get an opportunity to walk away, or somebody intervenes, or the aggressor goes away. The fight that doesn't happen, folks, that's how good guys like us win fights. That's the best way to win a fight, is not to have to fight in the first place. So the luxury of patience is everything. Yeah, and I can also tell you that a lot of the cases I work in, the killing cases, folks, if you watch TV and police dramas and courtroom dramas, the movies, you'd think that every killing had like this complicated motive, like there's a life insurance policy that somebody wanted, and somebody was having an affair, or folks, people kill people over nothing. Nothing. It happens all the time. It's ego. It's an impulse. Someone's high. Don't put yourself in those circumstances where you could be the victim, where people will look back and they'll all shrug and say, well, that didn't have to happen. Yeah, it didn't have to happen. Part of the reason it happened is maybe you put yourself in a bad place and didn't take opportunities to safely extract yourself, or you panicked and got yourself into a fight. And there's ways to mitigate all those risks. And frankly, BJJ is one of them.
I'm sure many people out there remember being in middle school and high school, and you said this earlier, don't talk to me like that, or don't disrespect my wife like that by urinating in public. And how, you have friends who say something to you and your friend says, hey, are you going to let him talk to you like that? There's an energy of like, you need to go show him that you're a badass, and don't let him have that kind of one up on you by speaking down to you. And this is something that it's been around forever. I've been hearing it my whole life, that people say, hey, go stand up for yourself. And it comes from a place, like I remember my friends saying it to other friends. People are afraid to hang out with somebody that is a coward. So if Andrew gets pushed and Andrew just says, hey man, he's having a bad day, and I'm insecure, and I doubt, I don't want to hang out with Andrew if he's a wimp. So I say, Andrew, go over there, man. Go check him. Show him that we're tough. And this is what changes when you start learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. When you start learning to defend yourself, you don't feel this need to prove to yourself and to others that you are tough, because you're very aware of where you stand, where you are on the scale of like very badass and novice. And you don't feel this need to prove to anybody or to yourself. And matter of fact, you're actually quite informed. Sometimes you say, you know what? I'm not going to do anything, because you realize how little you know. Sometimes you say, I'm not going to do anything because you realize that you know so much and that you're not in danger, and that person is having a bad day and you can't afford to ignore them. Because like you said, there is no guarantee that you're going to walk away and go home safely. You can always get injured. And even if you just get punched and you break your nose, or, you fall and hit your elbow on the ground and now you fracture your elbow, that's not worth it. So, the hardest, walking away from a fight is 100 times more difficult than getting into a fight when you're a novice, when you're new, when you're a white belt, when you're a blue belt. It's a little easier to walk away. So the more you know, the easier it is to walk away. And that is something that if we can just teach people to look the other way, apologize, and walk away, drive away, man, the amount of lives and injuries and fights that can be avoided, I don't know, 90%.
Yeah. And in most of those cases, the people walk away and the next day it's like it never happened. I mean, it's because they were just having a bad day and it passed, right? We
Yeah.
all have those bad days. Hey, we've all been in a situation where someone said something else we didn't like and we made a smart remark back, where we were the person acting like a dick. That happens. Maybe the other person is just having a bad day acting like a dick. There's no reason to get into a fight over that. And the law, you're not legally justified in using force because you're having a bad day or because you're experiencing irrational fear, what the law calls bare fear. That's not a justification. Everything you're doing in self-defense is required to be the conduct of a reasonable person. And just having a bad day is not an excuse for anything under the law. So you need to both have control of your own emotions, and you get better control of your emotions when you've mastered your life generally, and when you believe you can secure your safety so that you don't have to panic. So you have the luxury of patience, and be aware that, you may be dealing with that other person and they don't have mastery of their emotions, and they may act irrationally and excessively and escalate things. And be sensitive to that, and don't allow their irrational conduct to drive your fate.
Yeah, there's so much fear, and it's actually okay. There are so many men and women in the world that are afraid of whether or not they can defend themselves. They fear for their personal safety all the time, and they make up for that fear by being, verbally aggressive and assertive and gestures. And the thing is, when you can look deep down inside and say, you know what, I actually lack confidence. I actually think that I'm a lot tougher than I am. And because of that, I get angry. I have road rage, or I'm very impatient, because I am an adult and I am scared. And to say that takes a lot of courage to acknowledge it. And then takes even more courage to walk into a building and say, you know what? I want to learn some basic self-defense skills. And it's very scary to do, because you think that people might look at you and think that you're a beginner, or you're a coward, or you're less than. It's quite the opposite. They're going to say, oh, wow, you know what? All of us were the same. Before we learned the martial arts, before we learned jiu-jitsu, we were uncomfortable in our own skin. You are in that phase where you're uncomfortable, and now you're looking to become more comfortable. And we applaud you for being here. So it's the kind of thing where it's a little tough to swallow in the beginning, but once you do it, it's very rewarding, and nothing can compare to the feeling of somebody that exists in a way that if somebody yells at you for something random, that you can look at them and it doesn't even get your blood to rise, and you don't even get heated. Your palms don't turn sweaty. You just look at them and you say, wow, it's interesting. I wonder what they're going through.
Right. Yeah. And I'd like to circle back to what I talked about earlier. I found, as a brand new student to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, again, shout out to Professor Ray down in Colorado Springs, Gracie University. Look it up, folks, if you're in the area or anywhere in the world, gracieuniversity.com. The environment is so unbelievably welcoming. It's the opposite of a hostile, aggressive environment. It's completely welcoming. It feels like family. Everybody there is extremely helpful. Everybody's helped teaching everybody else. And it's I found it to be an unbelievably positive experience. I would recommend to anybody.
But it's a fighting class. Yeah, it can't be that safe, and it can't be that helpful and cooperative if it's a fighting class, because to learn how to fight, you have to really fight each other. No, that could not be further from the truth. Like you talked about with firearms, right? If you can do it in slow motion, low intensity to build reflexes.
Right.
So this idea of fighting to get ready, there might be a time for that after 8 months, a year, 2 years, when you say, you know what, let's bring up the intensity a little bit. And that's, I'm just so glad that you once again, those of you that are afraid of getting potentially hurt in a street fight, that don't feel prepared, you're afraid of going and learning self-defense. There's fear on all sides. You're trying to put their fear at ease by letting them know how safe and helpful the environment is.
Hey, Ryron, I want to be respectful of your time, and I'm hoping to be able to get you back on the show sometime in the future. So I don't want to completely exhaust our relationship here in this one show. So I'm going to wrap this up.
What about the third one?
What's that?
Let's do the third one.
You want to do the third one?
Real quick, 15 minutes. We got it.
All right. We do have a third video here spooled up. Let me pull this up.